In the quiet darkness of a summer night in July 2019, just before 11 o'clock, sailors aboard the USS Omaha watched their monitors in silence. Off the coast of San Diego, beneath a blanket of stars, something moved through the air. A perfect sphere, 6 feet across, traveling alongside their ship. For an hour, it danced through the night sky, and then, without warning, it dropped into the Pacific Ocean. No splash came, no wake appeared, no debris floated. Just gone. Hello, I'm Elias Whitaker, your guide through these hidden stories. For years, I've traveled across forgotten archives and coastal towns, listening to whispers of the unexplained. Tonight, we explore something particularly mysterious. Something that has been happening in the waters around us, just beyond the shoreline, where the familiar world gives way to the unknown. As we settle in together, let the worries of your day fade away. Tonight's story focuses on boundaries, the thin line between air and sea, between what we know and what we're only beginning to understand. Objects move through our oceans with capabilities that defy comprehension, and the growing surge of sightings has drawn scientists, military observers, and everyday citizens to look toward our coasts with renewed wonder. Since 2022, over 9,000 unexplained underwater sightings have appeared within just 10 miles of America's shores. 9,000 sightings stand out. That's not across decades or centuries, that's in just 3 years. August of 2025 brought a shift, and the reports surged while questions multiplied. The ocean, it seems, keeps secrets. So let's dim the lights of certainty for a while and explore this mystery together, gently as the night deepens around us. Feel yourself sinking into comfort as we dive beneath the surface of the ordinary, into waters where spheres of light move with impossible grace, where the laws of physics seem to bend, and where the question isn't just what they are, but how long they've been there. Rest now. Let the story unfold. Picture the coastline of America stretching from the rocky shores of Maine to the sun-warmed beaches of California, from the Gulf Coast's gentle waves to the Pacific's mighty swells. 30,000 miles of shoreline touch 2 oceans and a gulf. Beneath those waters, in depths we've barely begun to explore, something has moved. A platform called Enigma launched in late 2022 and calls itself the world's largest queryable database for UFO sightings, a digital repository where people report what they've seen, from the mundane to the extraordinary. The organization stays nonpartisan and simply collects data while creating a map of the unexplained. Over 30,000 reports of unidentified aerial and underwater phenomena have arrived since launch. But here's where our story truly begins. 9,000 of those sightings occurred within 10 miles of U.S. shorelines or major bodies of water, and 500 were within just 5 miles, close enough that witnesses could make out details and feel certain they saw something real. These aren't called UFOs anymore, not exactly. The military and researchers have started using a different term: unidentified submersible objects, or USOs, for objects that move through water with the same mysterious grace that their airborne cousins move through sky. California leads the reports with nearly 400 sightings off that Golden Coast, where the Pacific meets the continental shelf and the waters plunge to incredible depths. Florida follows with over 300 reports, its long coastlines on both Atlantic and Gulf providing ample opportunity for observation. These states have the longest coastlines, the most coastal populations, and the most eyes watching the waves. Raw numbers alone don't tell the full story, though. What matters comes from what people see, the consistency of the reports, the credibility of the witnesses, and the fact that some observations come not from excited civilians with shaky cameras, but from trained military personnel using calibrated instruments designed to detect threats. Let that thought settle with you as you relax deeper into comfort. The ocean covers more than 70% of our planet, and we've explored perhaps 5% of it. What might live in that vast dark expanse? What might visit it? What might hide there, waiting and watching? Let's return to that July night in 2019. The USS Omaha, a littoral combat ship, cut through the waters off San Diego. The time approached 11 p.m., and the crew stayed vigilant, as naval crews always do, their sensors scanning the darkness. And that's when something appeared on their screens. The ship's AN/KAX-2 electro-optical sensor system captured it, a stabilized turret designed specifically for maritime environments, equipped with digital video cameras, night vision capabilities, and laser rangefinders. This wasn't a civilian's smartphone footage, but military-grade technology operated by trained personnel, recording something that shouldn't exist. A sphere 6 feet in diameter moved through the air alongside their ship with purpose and intention. For an hour, it stayed with them and maintained position, as if observing. The footage came from inside the ship's Combat Information Center, filmed from the monitor screens where warfare specialists track potential threats. And then it descended. Not fell, but descended with control into the Pacific Ocean. The sensor operators watched and expected a splash, a wake, some disturbance of the water. There was none. The sphere simply transitioned from air to water, as if the boundary between them meant nothing, as if the fundamental difference between those two mediums was irrelevant to its technology or its nature. The Pentagon later confirmed the footage was authentic and recorded by Navy personnel. Susan Goff, a Defense Department spokesperson, verified it. This wasn't a hoax or misidentification, but something real, captured on calibrated instruments and witnessed by multiple trained observers. But the USS Omaha wasn't alone that July. According to filmmaker Jeremy Corbell, who has investigated these incidents extensively, the sphere captured on video was just one of as many as 14 craft that surrounded the Omaha over a 3-day series of encounters. 14 craft for 3 days, and these objects moved through the air and water around a United States warship while demonstrating capabilities no known technology possesses. At least 4 other Navy destroyers in the San Diego area experienced similar incidents during that same period. This wasn't an isolated event, but a sustained series of encounters, multiple ships, multiple witnesses, multiple recordings. Take a slow breath now and feel the mystery of it settling around you like a soft blanket. Somewhere off the California coast, in waters where submarines train and where the Navy guards our borders, something moved with freedom and grace that defied understanding. And the vast ocean simply swallowed it, keeping its secrets as it has for millennia. Every story needs a guide, someone who can translate the mystery into meaning. In this story, one voice rises above the others with particular authority, not because he's more convinced than anyone else, but because his credentials demand attention. Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, Ph.D., United States Navy, retired. An oceanographer who served his country for decades. From 2017 to 2021, he acted as administrator of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and before that, he served as the oceanographer of the Navy from 2014 to 2017. This man understands the ocean and has dedicated his life to studying its depths, its movements, its secrets. In March 2024, Admiral Gallaudet prepared a 29-page report for the Sol Foundation, a Bay Area-based think tank formed in 2023 to lead public research on unidentified anomalous phenomena. His words carried weight, and his concerns, expressed with the measured tone of a military officer and scientist, painted a picture that was both fascinating and unsettling. The fact that unidentified objects with unexplainable characteristics are entering U.S. water space, he wrote, and the DoD is not raising a giant red flag, is a sign that the government is not sharing all it knows about all-domain anomalous phenomena. Read that again in your mind, slowly. Objects with unexplainable characteristics enter our waters, and the Department of Defense, with all its resources and responsibilities, seems unconcerned, or at least publicly unconcerned. Admiral Gallaudet warned that objects capable of moving seamlessly between air and sea without crashing and without even creating a splash could have world-changing implications. Think about what that means. If these objects represent genuine technology unknown to our science, they could revolutionize virtually every aspect of human life, from air and maritime transportation to energy generation to agriculture. Imagine propulsion systems that ignore the friction of air and water, materials that withstand the crushing pressures of the deep ocean and the thin atmosphere of high altitude with equal ease, and energy sources compact enough to fit in a 6-foot sphere, yet powerful enough to move it at supersonic speeds. But Admiral Gallaudet also reminded us of something humbling. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the deep sea. Mars, a planet tens of millions of miles away, and we've mapped more of its dusty surface than we have of the ocean floors that cover our own world. The deep sea remains one of the least understood environments on Earth. Vast trenches plunge miles beneath the surface, creating landscapes of volcanic vents and alien ecosystems, places where the pressure would crush any human instantly, and where darkness is absolute and eternal. We've sent submarines to these depths, but only to tiny fractions of the territory, and most of it remains unexplored, unmapped, unknown. What might exist in those depths? What might visit them? Admiral Gallaudet didn't make wild claims about aliens or secret civilizations, but simply stated the facts. Objects move through our waters in ways we cannot explain, and our ignorance of the ocean leaves us vulnerable. These objects' capability, he wrote, jeopardizes U.S. maritime security, which is already weakened by our relative ignorance about the global ocean. Let that thought drift through your mind as you relax deeper. The ocean keeps its secrets, and perhaps some of those secrets have been keeping watch over us. Not all witnesses to these phenomena watch from ships. Some encounter them at altitude, moving at hundreds of miles per hour, with nothing between them and the unknown but a canopy of reinforced glass. Lieutenant Ryan Graves, United States Navy, retired, flew FA-18S, trained in one of the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world. In mid-2014, during routine training flights off the coast of Virginia Beach, his squadron began noticing something strange on their radar systems, phantom blips and returns that made no sense, objects moving with unfathomable speed and precision. Sometimes stationary 0.0 Mach, Graves later testified. Other times 250 to 350 knots, sometimes even supersonic, 1.1 to 1.2 Mach, all altitudes, and always over the ocean. Always over the ocean. That detail stands out because these objects weren't appearing randomly across the country, but clustered over water, as if the ocean was their domain, their highway, their home. The USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group, to which Graves was assigned, encountered these objects repeatedly throughout 2014 and into 2015, and the encounters became so frequent that his squadron recorded sightings almost daily. Not once a week or occasionally, but daily. Graves described seeing a specific type of object, a dark gray or black cube inside a clear sphere between 5 and 15 feet in diameter. One came within 50 feet of his jet, close enough to see details and close enough that a collision would have been catastrophic. The object had no exhaust plumes, no visible propulsion system, no wings. Sometimes it would rotate in place, and other times it would simply vanish when approached, as if aware it was being pursued. Think about what this means from a physics standpoint. Fighter jets fly at hundreds of miles per hour, maneuvering through complex flight patterns, and these objects match them or exceed them, with no visible means of propulsion, no heat signature from engines, and no sonic boom despite supersonic speeds. I knew then that what I saw was not our technology, Graves said later. We don't test experimental aircraft in training ranges because it's too dangerous, and I had access to everything classified. A fighter pilot with security clearances stated unequivocally that what he encountered wasn't American technology, not Russian, and not Chinese, but something else entirely. In 2023, Lieutenant Graves testified before Congress and founded an organization called Americans for Safe Aerospace, dedicated to aviation safety and the investigation of these phenomena. His concern wasn't philosophical but practical, because pilots encountered objects that could collide with aircraft, that could cause catastrophic accidents, and the official response seemed inadequate. Where that leaves us, Graves reflected, opens up options: extraterrestrial visitors, time travelers, breakaway civilizations, things that challenge the status quo. Extraterrestrial visitors, time travelers, breakaway civilizations. These aren't the wild speculations of conspiracy theorists or science fiction writers, but the considered options of a trained military pilot, someone who has stared at the mystery face to face and found no conventional explanation that fits. Let your mind wander through those possibilities as you sink deeper into rest. What would it mean if we share our world, our oceans, our skies, with something beyond our current understanding? Would it change how we see ourselves, our place in the universe, Or would it simply confirm what philosophers and dreamers have suspected for millennia? That we are not alone? The USS Omaha incident and Lieutenant Graves's encounters represent just the visible peak of a much larger phenomenon. Scratch beneath the surface and patterns emerge, patterns that suggest these underwater mysteries have been with us far longer than the 2025 surge might imply. In 2013, 6 years before the USS Omaha recorded its sphere, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol captured infrared footage off the coast of Puerto Rico. An object moved at speeds between 40 and 120 miles per hour, entered and exited the Atlantic Ocean without any significant deceleration, and at one point, traveling underwater, reached speeds of 95 miles per hour, far faster than any known submarine or torpedo. But here's where it becomes truly strange. The object split into two parts. One moment, a single craft, and the next, two distinct objects, both continuing to move with purpose and speed before they entered the water together and vanished into the depths. Go back further to 2004. The USS Nimitz faced another incident off the San Diego coast, and fighter pilots were dispatched to investigate objects that had descended 80,000 feet, more than 15 miles, in less than a second. 80,000 feet in 1 second. The G-forces from such acceleration would turn any human pilot into liquid, but these objects maneuvered as if inertia was a suggestion rather than a law. In 2023, Admiral Gallaudet recounted being contacted by a sailor who had been on the bridge of the USS Omaha during the 2019 incident. This sailor told him the sphere in the famous video was just one of many such encounters, and the sailor had witnessed a similar event aboard the USS Jackson in 2023, years after the Omaha incident, proving these encounters weren't isolated to one time or one location. The patterns are clear. Objects appear near Navy vessels, particularly off the coasts of California, Virginia, and Florida, and they demonstrate extraordinary capabilities, transitioning between air and water, moving at supersonic speeds, performing maneuvers that defy known physics. They seem especially interested in military operations, appearing during training exercises and near carrier strike groups. And they've been doing this for decades. Ron James, Media Relations Director for MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, offers a theory that's both fascinating and unsettling. There could be an entire advanced civilization coexisting with us here on planet Earth. They could be inside the Earth, or they could be underwater. It could be a combination of extraterrestrials that have bases here, or there's the very real possibility that we're dealing with an actual additional sentient race here on planet Earth. An additional sentient race shares our world, hidden in the places we cannot easily reach. The deep ocean trenches, the unexplored caves, the vast underwater territories we've barely begun to map. It sounds like science fiction, but consider this. We've explored only 5% of the ocean. 5%. The other 95% could contain anything. Underwater caverns large enough to house cities, thermal vents providing energy, ecosystems entirely independent of sunlight. And perhaps, if we allow ourselves to imagine, civilizations that learned to thrive in those depths long before humans built their first boats. Rest your mind on that possibility, not as truth and not as fact, but as a meditation on how much we don't know. The universe is vast, our planet is ancient, and the depths of the ocean might hold answers to questions we haven't even learned to ask yet. Every mystery has its gatekeepers, those who hold information and decide what the public learns and when. In the case of these underwater phenomena, that gatekeeper is the United States government, specifically the Department of Defense and its All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, known by the acronym AARO. AARO was created in 2022 specifically to investigate reports of unidentified anomalous phenomena, the government's current preferred term for what we used to call UFOs. Its mission is to detect, track, identify, and analyze these objects, and to assess whether they represent threats to national security or aviation safety. In March 2024, AARO released a 63-page unclassified historical report covering claims of UAP dating from 1945 through October 2023, and the conclusion was stark. AARO has found no evidence that any U.S. government investigation, academic-sponsored research, or official review panel has confirmed that any sighting of a UAP represented extraterrestrial technology. No evidence of extraterrestrial technology. The report stated that investigative efforts determined most sightings were the result of misidentification of ordinary objects and phenomena. Balloons, birds, drones, satellites, atmospheric effects, human error, and optical illusions. In November 2024, AARO released its fiscal year 2024 consolidated annual report, and the numbers were telling. As of October 24, 2024, there were 1,652 reports in total, and during the reporting period from May 2023 to June 2024, AARO received 757 new incident reports. Of those reports, AARO resolved 49 cases during the period, and all 49 resolved to prosaic objects, various types of balloons, birds, and uncrewed aircraft systems. Everything, it seemed, had a conventional explanation. But then came the caveat. 21 incidents occurred near national security sites, and these 21 were recorded on video, had multiple eyewitnesses, or were captured by other sensors. And these 21 could not be explained. Dr. John Koslowski, who became AARO's director in August 2024, put it candidly in November. There are interesting cases that, with my physics and engineering background and time in the intelligence community, I do not understand, and I don't know anybody else understands them. A physicist and engineer with intelligence community experience admitted there are cases he cannot explain. 21 cases defy conventional analysis, 21 cases that remain, despite all the resources and expertise of the Department of Defense, genuinely unidentified. Admiral Gallaudet's criticism becomes clearer in this context. The fact that unidentified objects with unexplainable characteristics are entering U.S. water space and the DoD is not raising a giant red flag is a sign that the government is not sharing all it knows. The government acknowledges unexplained cases exist, but the response seems muted, bureaucratic, almost dismissive. Meanwhile, Congress has held hearings. In July 2023, former intelligence officer David Grush testified alongside Ryan Graves and Commander David Fravor, another pilot who encountered these objects. In November 2024, another hearing brought Admiral Gallaudet and other witnesses before lawmakers, and Senators Chuck Schumer and Mike Rounds proposed the UAP Disclosure Act, legislation that would have created an independent review board to examine government records on these phenomena. Key provisions of that legislation were stripped out before passage, and the review board was never created. The momentum toward disclosure slowed, then stalled. Why? Perhaps because disclosure would require admitting our ignorance, or perhaps because the implications, whether the objects are foreign adversaries or something stranger, are too uncomfortable to confront publicly. Or perhaps, as some suggest, because there are truths being held back, classified at levels beyond public reach. Admiral Gallaudet recounted a curious incident from his own experience. He received an email about UAP incidents involving the USS Theodore Roosevelt, the same ship Lieutenant Graves was assigned to. The email discussed the encounters and shared information between officials, and then, mysteriously, it disappeared, deleted from his account, deleted from others' accounts, as if it had never existed. Small mysteries nest within larger mysteries. Emails vanish, reports get sanitized, and a pattern of information being controlled, managed, kept just out of public view emerges. Or perhaps, the skeptics would argue, there's simply nothing to disclose. Perhaps the unexplained cases remain unexplained, not because they represent revolutionary technology or visitors from elsewhere, but because the data is insufficient, the observations too brief or unclear, the witnesses mistaken despite their training and credentials. Let both possibilities rest in your mind as you drift toward sleep. The government says there's nothing to fear and nothing proven, but 21 cases remain unexplained. 9,000 sightings cluster around our coasts, and the ocean keeps its secrets, dark and deep. One of the most persistent questions in any mystery is how reliable the witnesses are. Could trained military personnel be mistaken? Could sophisticated sensor systems be fooled? Let's examine what we know about the technology involved. The USS Omaha's AN/KAX-2 electro-optical sensor system is not a simple camera, but a stabilized turret designed specifically for maritime threat detection, combining digital video cameras, night vision capabilities, and laser rangefinders. It's designed to track small boats, periscopes, incoming missiles, fast-moving targets in challenging conditions. When such a system records an object for an hour, tracks that object moving with purpose, and captures the object transitioning into water without the expected splash or wake, that's significant data, not proof of anything extraordinary perhaps, but data that demands explanation. The fighter jets flown by Lieutenant Graves and his squadron carried radar systems designed to detect enemy aircraft at extreme ranges, systems that can track multiple targets simultaneously, calculate their speed and trajectory, and paint them for weapon systems. When these radars began showing objects moving from stationary to supersonic speeds, hovering at multiple altitudes, and appearing almost daily over the ocean, that's not one glitch, but a pattern. The infrared footage from the Puerto Rico incident in 2013 came from U.S. Customs and Border Patrol sensors designed to detect smugglers and unauthorized border crossings. And these sensors operate in infrared, seeing heat signatures that visible light cameras would miss. When they recorded an object moving at 95 miles per hour underwater and splitting into two parts, that represented sensor data from a different spectrum entirely. Another layer of confirmation. Multiple sensor types, multiple incidents, multiple witnesses. This is what makes the phenomenon difficult to dismiss entirely, because it's not one person with a smartphone seeing lights in the sky, but trained personnel operating calibrated military equipment and recording data that contradicts our understanding of physics and propulsion. But here's where the skeptics make valid points. Mick West, a science writer and investigator who specializes in debunking claims, has offered alternative explanations for some of the famous footage. The triangular UFO images that circulated? He suggested they could be the result of bokeh, an optical effect where out-of-focus light sources take on the shape of the camera's aperture. If the camera has a triangular aperture, distant lights appear triangular and mundane objects made to seem mysterious by the quirks of optics. AARO's own reports emphasize that most sightings, the vast majority, resolve to prosaic explanations. Balloons, especially weather balloons and high-altitude research balloons, can appear to move strangely when buffeted by winds at different altitudes, and they can seem to hover, to dart suddenly, to change direction unpredictably. Birds can show up on radar. Drones can be misidentified as something more mysterious. And Starlink satellites, a constellation of thousands orbiting Earth, have become a frequent explanation for strings of lights moving across the night sky. Optical illusions are real, and human perception is fallible. Even trained observers, even sophisticated sensors, can be fooled under the right conditions. And yet, 21 cases near national security sites that AARO's director, a physicist and engineer, admits he cannot explain. An object tracked for an hour by naval sensors, dropping into the ocean without a splash. Fighter pilots encountering objects within 50 feet of their aircraft, objects with no visible propulsion, and performing maneuvers that would require technology we don't possess. The line between skepticism and dismissal is thin. Healthy skepticism demands evidence, questions assumptions, and seeks conventional explanations. But dismissal refuses to engage with the genuinely unexplained, waves away credible witnesses, and ignores data that doesn't fit a preferred narrative. In March 2024, AARO demonstrated a prototype sensor system called Gremlin, designed specifically to detect, track, and characterize UAP. And during a test event, it successfully collected data. The government is investing in technology to study this phenomenon, which suggests, at minimum, that someone considers it worth studying. So what are the sensors really seeing? Mundane objects misidentified, foreign adversary technology, natural phenomena we don't yet understand, or something else entirely, something that requires us to expand our understanding of what's possible? The answer, as with so many things, likely depends on which cases we're examining. Some sightings are surely misidentifications, but some, those 21 unexplained cases, those encounters captured on multiple sensors by multiple witnesses, remain mysteries worthy of genuine investigation. When faced with a mystery that defies easy explanation, the human mind seeks patterns, constructs theories, reaches for understanding. The surge of underwater UFO sightings off U.S. coasts in 2025 has spawned theories ranging from the soberly scientific to the wildly speculative. Let's explore them, not as truths, but as possibilities, as different ways of making sense of the unknown. Theory 1. Advanced human technology. Perhaps these objects are exactly what the Department of Defense sometimes hints they might be: advanced drones or aircraft developed by foreign adversaries. China and Russia have invested heavily in military technology, and hypersonic weapons, stealth aircraft, and underwater drones are known areas of development. Perhaps what Navy personnel are encountering are test flights of systems designed to probe American defenses, to gather intelligence, to demonstrate capabilities. This theory has the virtue of keeping everything within the realm of known physics. No aliens required, and no revolutionary new science, just classified military programs doing what classified military programs do, pushing the boundaries of engineering in secret. But Admiral Gallaudet's response to this theory is pointed. I knew then that what I saw was not our technology. We don't test experimental aircraft in training ranges because it's too dangerous, and I had access to everything classified. A man with decades of military service, with clearances that granted him access to highly classified programs, stated flatly that what's being observed doesn't match any known human technology. Lieutenant Graves made a similar point. The objects appeared during routine training exercises in areas where testing experimental craft would risk catastrophic accidents. No military tests unproven technology in spaces where it might collide with billion-dollar fighter jets and kill trained pilots. And the capabilities described, objects accelerating from stationary to supersonic speeds instantly, descending 80,000 feet in under a second, moving from air to water without slowing, require propulsion systems and materials, science far beyond current public knowledge. If China or Russia possesses such technology, it would represent a revolution in physics and engineering so profound that it would render most current military hardware obsolete overnight. Possible? Perhaps. Likely? The credentialed experts who've encountered these objects say no. Theory 2. Natural phenomena. Perhaps what's being observed isn't technology at all, but natural phenomena we don't yet fully understand. The ocean and atmosphere are complex systems capable of producing effects that can seem impossible, and ball lightning, plasma formations, atmospheric refraction, and bioluminescent organisms are part of nature's deep toolkit of the strange and wonderful. Some of the Fort Lauderdale footage showing green lights moving underwater could be explained by bioluminescence, organisms that produce light through chemical reactions. Certain species of jellyfish, plankton, and deep-sea creatures create luminous displays that can seem otherworldly. Radar anomalies can be caused by atmospheric conditions, by temperature inversions that bend radar waves in unusual ways, and what appears to be a fast-moving object might be a radar echo bouncing off layers of air at different temperatures, creating a phantom target. But this theory struggles with the same problem as the previous one: the consistency and specificity of the observations. Natural phenomena tend to be random, brief, unpredictable, and they don't follow ships for hours or appear almost daily for months in the same geographic areas. They don't demonstrate what appears to be intentional behavior, maintaining position relative to aircraft, evading when approached, operating near sensitive military installations. And the sensor data from multiple types of systems, radar, infrared, electro-optical, visual observation by trained personnel, all showing the same objects performing the same impossible maneuvers, suggests something more than atmospheric tricks or glowing jellyfish. Theory 3: non-human intelligence. And so we arrive at the theory that makes many uncomfortable, that challenges our understanding of our place in the universe. Perhaps these objects represent technology created by non-human intelligence. Extraterrestrial visitors, as Lieutenant Graves mentioned, beings from other worlds who have mastered interstellar travel and have been observing Earth, perhaps for generations or perhaps for millennia. The ocean, covering 70% of our planet and largely unexplored, would make an ideal location for observation posts or bases, hidden from casual view, protected by the crushing pressures of the deep, and accessible only to those with technology advanced enough to ignore the barriers that confine humanity to the surface. Or, as Ron James suggested, an entirely different possibility. There could be an entire advanced civilization coexisting with us here on planet Earth. Not visitors from space, but neighbors we never knew we had, a species that evolved in the deep ocean or that retreated there long ago, developing technology in parallel with humanity, but hidden from our view. They could be inside the Earth, or they could be underwater. It's a theory that sounds absurd on its face. How could an advanced civilization exist on Earth without our knowledge? But again, consider this. We've explored 5% of the ocean. 5%. In the 95% we haven't explored, in trenches miles deep where no light penetrates, in vast underwater territories we've never mapped, could something exist there unknown to us? Lieutenant Graves also mentioned time travelers, beings from our own future, returning to observe or study their past, or breakaway civilizations, groups that achieved advanced technology and separated from mainstream humanity, living in secret and watching us from hidden vantage points. These theories share a common thread. They all require us to accept that we are not alone, that we share our world or our existence with intelligences equal to or greater than our own. For many, that idea is profoundly unsettling, but for others, it's strangely comforting, a confirmation that the universe is stranger and more populated than mainstream science acknowledges. But theories, no matter how intriguing, are not evidence, and evidence, in this case, remains frustratingly elusive. We have sensor data showing anomalous objects. We have testimony from credible witnesses. We have footage verified as authentic by the Pentagon, but we don't have wreckage. We don't have clear photographs showing unambiguous details. We don't have, as AARO's reports make clear, definitive proof that any of these objects represent technology beyond human capability, much less proof of non-human intelligence. The theories remain theories, and the mystery remains mysterious. And perhaps for now, that's all we can say with certainty. Which brings us back to where we began, the surge of 2025. Something changed in August 2025. The Enigma app, which had been quietly collecting reports for nearly 3 years, suddenly saw a spike, and sightings along the U.S. coastlines increased while media coverage intensified. Scientists and military observers began paying closer attention, and the 9,000 underwater sightings within 10 miles of American shores, accumulated since 2022, became a topic of national conversation. Was this a real increase in the phenomenon itself? Were more objects appearing and more encounters happening? Or was it simply an increase in reporting, more people aware of the Enigma platform, and more witnesses willing to come forward with what they'd seen? The data doesn't tell us which. Crowdsourced information platforms like Enigma are valuable for identifying patterns and trends, but they're subject to reporting bias. If news coverage increases public awareness, more people report sightings, and that doesn't necessarily mean more sightings are occurring, just that more are being documented. And the sightings reported to Enigma aren't verified in the same way that military sensor data is. Anyone can submit a report, and misidentifications, hoaxes, and genuine confusion all get mixed into the database alongside potentially legitimate observations. California's nearly 400 sightings and Florida's 300 make sense from a purely statistical standpoint. These states have the longest coastlines, the largest coastal populations, and the most people living near the ocean who might witness something unusual. More eyes mean more observations, regardless of whether there's actually more to observe. But the concentration of reports and the consistency of descriptions, objects moving between air and water, spherical shapes, luminous phenomena, things behaving in ways that seem intelligent rather than random. These patterns are harder to dismiss as mere statistical artifacts. Author Kent Hecken Lively, who wrote Catastrophic Disclosure, Aliens, the Deep State, and the Truth, offered a comment that captures the uncertainty. That's one of two things. That's something we don't understand, or that means our technology is picking up ghosts underwater. Ghosts, a metaphor for things that seem to be there but vanish when examined closely, phenomena that register on sensors but defy explanation, data points that hint at something real but remain just beyond the threshold of certainty. The surge, in some ways, is less about what's in the water than what's in our awareness. For decades, perhaps centuries, these phenomena have been occurring, and sailors throughout history have reported strange lights in the ocean, objects rising from the depths, encounters with the inexplicable. But those reports were scattered, local, easy to dismiss as superstition or exaggeration. Now we have sensors, we have databases, we have platforms like Enigma collecting reports in real time and creating a centralized repository of the strange. We have congressional hearings and Pentagon offices dedicated to investigation. The phenomena haven't changed, but our ability to document and discuss them has. And that's the true surge, a surge in attention, in data, in public discourse. Whether there's a corresponding surge in the actual phenomenon itself remains, like so much in this story, uncertain. As our story draws toward its close, let's return to the ocean, that vast dark expanse that covers most of our world and holds most of its mysteries. Admiral Gallaudet reminded us, we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the deep sea. It's a statement that bears repeating and that should humble us because we've sent rovers to Mars, mapped its craters and canyons, analyzed its soil and atmosphere, and accomplished extraordinary things in space exploration. But the deepest parts of our own ocean remain less explored than the moon. The Mariana Trench, nearly 7 miles deep, has been visited by humans only a handful of times, and the vast abyssal plains, the mid-ocean ridges, the thousands of seamounts and underwater mountains, most have never felt the touch of human technology. What exists in those depths? We know of extraordinary life forms, creatures that generate their own light, that survive crushing pressures and near-freezing temperatures, that thrive near volcanic vents in ecosystems completely independent of sunlight. We've discovered new species regularly and found entire communities of life in places we thought were barren. If nature can surprise us so consistently, why not technology? Why not intelligence? The ocean is vast enough to hide anything. But here's what we must also acknowledge. The evidence, while intriguing, while suggestive, while supported by credible witnesses and documented by military-grade sensors, is not conclusive. AARO's reports are clear on this point because most sightings resolve to mundane explanations, and the unexplained cases remain unexplained. But unexplained doesn't mean alien, doesn't mean revolutionary, and doesn't even necessarily mean real. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, and we want answers, clear categories, definitive proof. The phenomenon refuses to provide them and exists in that frustrating space between complete dismissal and confirmed reality. A space where reasonable people can disagree, where the data supports multiple interpretations, and where certainty remains elusive. Perhaps that's okay. Perhaps the lesson of this story isn't about underwater UFOs at all, but about how little we truly know, how vast the unknown remains despite all our technology and exploration. It's a reminder that mystery still exists in our world, that there are still questions without easy answers, and still frontiers to explore, both in the ocean depths and in our understanding. Admiral Gallaudet's warning about maritime security is worth heeding, regardless of what these objects turn out to be. If they're foreign adversary technology, we need better detection and defense, and if they're natural phenomena, we need better scientific understanding. And if there's something else entirely, something that requires us to expand our conception of what's possible, then we need the humility to admit how much we don't know. The 9,000 sightings within 10 miles of America's shores, the 21 unexplained cases near national security sites, the USS Omaha sphere dropping into the Pacific without a splash. These are data points in a larger story that's still being written. They're questions waiting for answers and mysteries inviting investigation. But they're not reasons for fear. Whatever these objects are, they've been appearing for decades, perhaps longer, and they've demonstrated no hostility and caused no confirmed harm. They simply are, moving through our waters, appearing on our sensors, challenging our assumptions, and then vanishing back into the deep. As you drift towards sleep now, let the mystery be a comfort rather than a source of anxiety. We live in a world still capable of surprising us, still holding secrets, still offering glimpses of the unknown. And that's not something to fear, but something to wonder at. The ocean will keep its secrets a while longer, and the objects will continue their mysterious dance between air and sea. and we'll keep watching, keep questioning, keep seeking understanding. Perhaps one day we'll have answers, but tonight it's enough to know the questions exist, to feel the presence of mystery in our world, to rest in the knowledge that there is still so much to discover. And so, dear listener, we've journeyed together through the depths and shallows of this mystery. From the USS Omaha's encounter off San Diego to the thousands of reports clustering along our coastlines, from Admiral Gallaudet's warnings to Lieutenant Graves's testimony, from government investigations to theories that stretch the imagination. What have we learned? Perhaps that certainty is elusive. The government says there's no proof of extraterrestrial technology, yet acknowledges cases it cannot explain, and skeptics offer reasonable alternative explanations, yet some observations defy easy dismissal. Witnesses describe impossible maneuvers and revolutionary capabilities, yet the evidence remains just shy of definitive. This is the nature of genuine mystery, because it resists simple answers and demands we hold multiple possibilities in mind simultaneously, accepting that we may never have complete resolution. But that's okay. Not every story needs a tidy ending, and not every question needs an immediate answer. Sometimes the value is in the wondering itself, in the reminder that our world is larger and stranger than our daily lives suggest. As I've traveled and studied these forgotten tales, I've learned that mystery serves a purpose. It keeps us humble, reminds us that despite our technology and knowledge, we don't have all the answers, and invites us to remain curious, to keep questioning, to stay open to possibilities we hadn't considered. Whether the objects in our oceans are advanced drones, natural phenomena, or something that challenges our understanding of reality itself, they share one quality. They remind us that we don't know everything, and that's a precious reminder in an age that sometimes pretends to certainty about everything. Rest well tonight, knowing you're connected to something greater, a world of mystery and wonder, of questions still unanswered, of depths still unexplored. The ocean will be there tomorrow, keeping its secrets, and the stars will shine above, holding their own mysteries. And you, having explored this story with me, can drift into sleep with your curiosity awakened and your sense of wonder renewed. Thank you for joining me on this journey. In these stories, we find not just information, but perspective, not just facts, but food for thought, and perhaps most importantly, not just answers, but better questions. Sleep well, dear listener. Let the mystery cradle you gently into dreams, and know that tomorrow the world will still be full of wonders waiting to be discovered. This is Elias Whitaker, your guide through hidden stories, wishing you deep rest and peaceful dreams.